the next PlayStation, the PSP2, whatever you like to call it. The NGP versus the Nintendo 3DS versus the iPod Touch 5th generation. Now, this is going to be a pretty big deal, like I said. I think that one of these three is going to be the undisputed king in the next probably 2 or 3 years. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of compare them and help you guys decide which one is probably going to be the best. So let's go ahead and talk about the one that everybody's been talking about this week, which is the Sony NGP. Now, if you missed out, I'll go ahead and give you a quick recap. The NGP is the next generation PlayStation PSP. It's got some really insane specs. It's got a quad-core processor. It's really good graphics as well. I mean, this thing is going to have very similar graphics to what you might find on the PS3. Maybe not quite as good, but in reality, when you're playing it, you really won't be able to tell a whole lot of difference. So it's going to be really, really good looking as far as the graphics go. It's got a 5-inch OLED touchscreen. Really big, nice display. Everyone who's ever seen it just can't say enough about how much they like it. But it's also got some other cool things, such as a rear touchpad. So almost kind of similar to what you might find on like your mouse pad or whatever. Well, that's going to be on the back of the next PSP. But it's also got analog sticks, so you have dual analog sticks. You got motion controls like in the PlayStation Move. You've got 3G, Wi-Fi. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. The next PSP is going to be just absolutely excellent. So I won't get into too much of any more of the details, but I will say is kind of some of the stuff I like and dislike. One of the things that I'm a little bit leery about is the price. With something like this that has so much huge technology, I mean, you've got processors and this and that and everything, it's probably going to cost a fair bit more than the 3DS. Now, that's kind of an important thing because a lot of people think the 3DS is a bit overpriced. I think the price will come down, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But as far as the NGP is, I think one of the number one things Sony has to be careful of is the price. No one wants a repeat of when the PlayStation 3 came out and it was like $700 and nobody was like, ugh. So as long as they can keep the NGP at a reasonable price point, I would say $400 would be the max. Hopefully more closer to $350 or $300. I think if they could do that, then the NGP is just going to be a really solid player. Now, some of the things I really do like is the fact that it no longer uses UMDs. This is kind of a little bit of disappointment, obviously, because all your PSP games you won't be able to play it. But to be honest, I think that it's definitely the right choice. The old style of the discs, the UMDs, just wasn't that good for gaming. I mean, it was just they were pretty large, and you had to have a whole disc drive and everything in a handheld. So that just wasn't the most ideal situation. And in the NGP, you'll be able to download games and apps and all that kind of stuff, but you'll also be able to use an SD card like, it's not going to be an SD card, but it's going to be kind of similar to what you might find in the 3DS. You'll buy it at the store and you go and plug it in and it'll work just fine. So the NGP is definitely, I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be an absolutely excellent handheld. So next one we're going to talk about is the Nintendo 3DS. Again, I'm going to go ahead and just roll through it pretty quickly here. You do have a 3.5-inch, 16:9, not touchscreen, but it's going to be a 3D display. That's pretty much one of the major things about the 3DS is that you're going to be able to use without glasses 3D. This is going to be a pretty cool thing, I think, because obviously 3D is really picking up. You hear more and more about it every day, every week. The more 3D TVs and this and that. However, being able to have 3D in your pocket, so it's going to be a fairly small console, and you'll be able to see it without any glasses. It's going to be a really cool thing. Now, some people have said that it's not going to make them a little sick and this and that, which I definitely can understand. I mean, a lot of people don't like 3D too much. I don't love it, but I don't really have any issues with it. But the cool thing is with 3DS, there's a little slider there. You shut off the 3D, and it just turns into just standard 2D, and you don't have any issues. Now, moving on from that, it does have a touchscreen on the bottom. It is resistive, so you're going to still need to use a stylus, which is kind of a bit of an annoyance, but I don't think it'll be that huge of a deal. It will have a joy. It's not exactly a touchpad. It's going to be kind of similar to what on the original PSP, the little thumbstick. It's going to be a little bit bigger and nicer than that, but it's still not going to be a full, analog stick like on the NGP. Now, this is going to have the same kind of design as the DS. So, of course, you have two screens. It'll be able to open and close. You will have two cameras on the back, which is a pretty cool thing. We actually go ahead and take 3D photos, and you can go ahead and, of course, view it on the screen. And you have a front-facing camera as well. Now, the 3DS is not going to be nearly as graphically intense as the NGP. Most people have said it's probably somewhere around GameCube to Wii graphics, maybe not quite that good. That's not quite. That's not quite. It's not nearly as good as the NGP and probably the iPod Touch. However, it still should be plenty good enough. And one of the really big things about the DS was, it didn't have that great graphical capabilities. Developers really made up for that with some really unique and innovative games. So I'm not really too worried about that on the 3DS. Now, the 3DS will be available the end of March, or actually the end of February in Japan, and the end of March in the United States and Europe, and I believe a couple of other countries. So pretty much by the end of March, pretty much everyone should be able to pick up the 3DS. It's going to vary price by price through the countries. However, in the United States, it will run you $249. A little bit expensive, but I think it will be pretty good, and I do like the 3DS. Now, the last one is going to be the wild card, the iPod Touch 5th generation. Now, the iPod Touch is slowly becoming a better and better gaming platform. I think with the 5th generation, Apple is really going to break it out and really going to make this, just a major competitor to the other two. Obviously the iPod Touch is really, and of course the iPhone, but I'm going to be mostly talking about the iPod Touch here. There's one major thing what makes it so successful. The App Store. The App Store is just really, really good for gaming. Now, if you're wanting to buy, some of the really nicer games, like, you're not going to find a Pokemon or Uncharted or any of these big franchises on the iPod. However, there are a lot of new ones, there are a lot of cheaper games, and a lot of ones that are really picking up steam. So, for example, Angry Birds. Angry Birds is turning into a really, really big thing. And, of course, there are a lot of other developers, such as Electronic Arts. They're bringing over Madden, for example. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit on the iPod Touch. I've absolutely loved that game. I've been playing it probably more than any game that I've had in the last couple months. So while a lot of people say, and I do agree, that a lot of the quality of games aren't that great, don't count it out. There are a lot of really good games coming out, and the good thing is they're really pretty cheap. So while with the NGP you're probably going to be paying probably $40 to $50. I would imagine $50 for games. With the 3DS probably $40 or so. But on the iPod Touch, you're usually $10 is about the max you'll ever play. For example, Dead Space just came out, and that cost about $7. So you're getting a lot of content, very close to what you might find on console quality, but for a fraction of the price, which allows you to buy a lot more games for the same money. And so what if maybe one or two of them aren't the greatest? You still got 2 or 3 more games for the same price. So that's one of the big things that I do like about the iPod Touch. Now, of course, the iPod is also really a wide-ranging device. So, you will actually be able to get on the internet. It's got an absolutely excellent browser. You have a full touchscreen, with various other apps that aren't gaming-related. You've got both a front and rear-facing camera. You've got a lot of really cool things. It's just not a gaming device. Obviously, it's an iPod, so you got movies and music and all that kind of stuff. Now, one of the things that are about the iPod Touch 5th generation that should be new this year is the possibility of a 3D display. Now, this isn't confirmed, it's mostly just been rumors. However, it wouldn't surprise me that much if we do see a 3D display very similar to what you might find on the Nintendo 3DS on the next iPod Touch. Now, in addition to that, of course, it's probably going to be more powerful with, better specs. And, the graphics are continuously just getting better and better and better. I would say a lot of the games on the on the iPod Touch right now are already PSP quality and above. So, with the next generation, it should be much, much better. So anyway, that's my brief wrap-up of all three. All three have their pros and cons. The iPod Touch is really good. It's probably going to be along the cheaper. I would say it's going to be about the same price, $230. It might vary, it might be up or down just a little bit, but iPod Touch is really going to be solid, and I'm definitely liking that. And the 3DS, I think, is going to be, after how successful the DS has been, I don't think they're going to have any issues selling millions and millions of them. And, as soon as they do that, that guarantees that the game's going to come. And with that unique 3D display, it's going to add a lot of new, people interested about 3D. However, my pick is definitely going to be the Sony NGP. This thing is absolutely just going to be phenomenal. Now, hopefully it'll be out by the end of the year, maybe the early next year. Some places they haven't been entirely clear. But from what we know about this, it's just going to blow the others out of the water, as long as they keep the price right. Anyway, for the second half of D3Live, I will be taking live questions from everyone in the chat. As always, with every episode of D3Live, it's filmed in front of a live audience. We've got a lot of people in here watching on Blog TV, so let's go ahead and just take some questions. Do I think the iPod Touch 4G, the gaming performance and the CPU will improve? Yeah, I do think so. I think that pretty much every year Apple likes to improve it, to add more processing, more RAM, this, that. I definitely think that with a dual-core processor, it will really open up a lot more better-looking gaming for the iPod Touch. What's the difference between an MB and MC model on the iPod Touch? Well, it's pretty much the different types of iPod Touch. The MC model is the newer. It's the iPod Touch 4th generation, the iPod Touch 3rd generation, and the MC model of the iPod Touch 2nd generation. Really, the major difference is just for jailbreaking. Sometimes you can jailbreak an MB and not an MC. But really, the best way to kind of keep track of the different iPods is just see if it's a 2nd generation, 3rd generation, or 4th generation. Does the NGP have a UMD slot? No, it does not. The NGP uses, like I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, it's almost like an SD card. It's not going to be, it's some kind of proprietary Sony thing, but it's going to be a small chip where you just go ahead and put it in just like what you would do on a DS or a 3DS. So that's the way you'll get the games. You also will be able to download games as well. However, I think the major thing would just be buying going to the store and buying the cards. Unreal Engine 3 for iOS. What games will be made with it? A lot. Now, there aren't a ton of games with Unreal Engine just yet. It was only, it was only announced and everything. It's only been out for a fairly short time, the Unreal Engine. However, as more and more people kind of get a hold of it, more developers decide that that's what they want to do, I think we will start seeing a lot of really, really nice looking games on the iPod and the iPhone. Could you jailbreak the PSP? There were a lot of people who were able to hack the PSP before, but I think that Sony is really kind of getting annoyed because a lot of that was used just for piracy. And I think Sony is really trying to crack down on that kind of stuff because that hurts them a big time. When there's a lot of piracy, developers decide, we don't want to develop for this. We'd rather do it on some other platform. So I really think that Sony is going to try to crack down a lot harder on the NGP. Will Xbox ever go mobile? Boy, I wish I could tell you the answer to that. I honestly think that it will. A couple of years back, I know that they kind of were talking a little bit about more than just the Xbox 360, maybe, expanding it out into different markets. I would presume that would mean handheld. However, we really don't know anything about it. I haven't ever heard any concrete anything. Pretty much just a couple of rumors here and there, but I really wouldn't expect to see a new Xbox anytime soon as far as a portable one. But I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen eventually. Maybe not now, but maybe in a year or 2 years or something, that we actually might see a portable Xbox. That would be really cool. Should you buy an iPod Touch 4G or wait for the 5th generation model? It's actually kind of a hard question. The iPod Touch, they release a new one every September, so it kind of depends. September's still a pretty long way away. If you want to, you can go ahead and buy the 4th generation. That's what I have. I really love it. If you want to wait, you absolutely could, but I think that that's a long way away. It'd probably be better to go ahead and just buy the 4th generation now, and then see about maybe getting the 5th generation later. Since the NGP has a front-facing camera and front and back-facing camera, will you be able to make Skype calls? Actually, Sony has been a little bit kind of cagey about that. Of course, the PSP 3000 does have Skype. I would imagine, yes, the next NGP will have Skype, especially with, of course, like you said, the front and rear-facing cameras. However, Sony did not say yes. They didn't say no either, but I would guess, yeah, I would think it would make a lot of sense for it to have Skype. Do I recommend getting the iPhone 4 on Verizon now or in June where they'll update the iPhones? Yeah, I think go ahead. I would recommend not buying the iPhone 4 right now. It just doesn't make any sense on Verizon. Wait until July when when the new iPhone 5, or whatever they decide to come out, the next generation iPhone comes out. I would be really surprised if it doesn't come out for AT&T and Verizon. So unless you absolutely have to have the iPhone right now, I would recommend going ahead and waiting. Anyway, guys, that's it for this week's episode of D3Live. Now, if you guys are interested in more D3Live, feel free to subscribe to my channel. You can also go ahead and take a look at D3Live every week. I do it at Saturday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, so you can watch the show live or watch it pre-recorded on YouTube. Anyway, guys,